So, welcome to 15-minute time limit, where
Woo!
myself, Stephen A, and Alex Colon, international wrestling superstar.
Steven, this is the Undertaker.
You paid $1,000 just for that, dude. So,
Back
we're
to
gonna
business.
talk. One day, we're gonna do a show about cameos. I think, right?
I mean, we got to. Love it.
So, but today we're here to talk about the death of ECW, right? I think this is something that
Yes.
everybody's kind of fantasy booked in one way or another on a piece of paper somewhere. What if ECW never died, right?
Yeah, I'm sure it's already been done about 10,000 times.
Yeah. So what I'm gonna do here is we're gonna do what I'm calling the wind up. Or wait, that's the swing. I don't watch a lot of baseball, but
We can tell.
so I'm gonna go over kind of like just the quick timeline about the death of ECW, how they could have kept going, public statements about what would have happened if they did keep going, if they didn't die. And I want to say real quick, my sources for this are interviews, and the thing about interviews is it's got to be confirmed 2 times because we all know Paul Heyman lies. We all know this, right? So if I say,
Gotta
well,
look good,
Heyman,
bro.
yeah, if I say Heyman said something, that means that I also heard it from a secondary source. And a fantastic book. Let me get the author. The Unauthorized History of ECW is a fantastic book written by Scott E. Williams. I can't recommend it enough. And a lot of that info is going to come from that book where he interviewed a lot of the staff and everything.
All right,
So
we're back.
let's get right into it. I'm going to do a quick timeline, and then we'll get into the 15 minutes where Alex is going to tell me what's what and how I'm wrong. So let's get into it. September 9th, 2000, ECW packs 5,000 people for a show in Mississauga, Canada. This was their largest show ever. To me, 5,000 people, WWE doesn't do that in like 2022 often. Or, well, pre-COVID, 5,000 people for WWE was actually doing like pretty good.
Really?
I mean,
Nuh-uh.
if you look at the WWE attendance, bro, they do a lot of
You're
shows in
fucking.
like the 2,000s and 3,000s, dude.
Nuh-uh. Like live
Oh.
shows?
Yeah, like house shows and stuff. Yeah.
Steve, get frustrated, Steven.
SmackDown tapings, bro. SmackDown tapings can be like 3,000-4,000 nowadays, dude.
This is the Undertaker, Steven.
September 25th, 2000. WWE leaves USA Network, debuts on TNN, where ECW was at. October 6, 2000, ECW's final show airs on TNN. December 23rd, 2000, ECW taped their final ECW arena show. This show never aired. You can buy it on TV, but I want to talk about this before we get into the 15 minutes. A lot of people, I feel like their final memories of ECW were like 6 months before the company actually closed. Because if you look at this final show, it's totally new angles, different people. Jerry Lynn is a heel and Cyrus is his manager. It's like, I think most people had completely stopped watching by this point, right?
I mean, I was going ECW wise. I stopped watching. I think once the TNN thing fell through, I was gone. I figured it was dead at that point.
Yeah, so I mean, this is where you have like Chili Willy as a major player, and a lot of the, I don't want to call them jobbers, but a lot of the enhancement undercard guys are kind of main eventing shows. Sabu is gone. Rob Van Dam is gone, etc. January 7th, 2001, Guilty as Charged airs, ECW's final pay-per-view. And January 13th, 2001 is the final show in Pine Bluffs, Arkansas. March 19th, 2001, TNT cancels Nitro, and TNT airs their final Nitro on TNT March 26, 2001. So I want to go over ECW's television options at the time. There was talk that ECW was going to get the WCW Saturday night spot. TNT wanted to keep wrestling, but WCW just cost too much money. And there was talk that they were going to use ECW as that Saturday night 605 spot. Who knows how serious that was, but that was in talk. USA Network was being lobbied by Vince himself to take on ECW as a late night edgy weekend show, but USA pulled the plug at the last minute and felt they're like, if we can't have the number 1 show, we're not going to take the number 3 show that appears to be dying. There was an offer from a company to create a strip show where they would have done a 5-time a week 30-minute highlight reel that would have been syndicated out to regional sports nets. So think about like Fox Sports Ohio top 10 biggest blunders of the week style shows. It would have been one of those kind of shows, a strip show. But they fell, and Tommy Dreamer wanted to take on the debt and assets of the company and go with this strip show. And Paul Heyman claims he didn't allow Dreamer to do this because it would have been a huge bomb. They wouldn't have had any content. They didn't have the means to film, and Dreamer would have wound up with $7 million of personal debt versus keeping it in the company where WWE absorbed that debt, or Heyman just wanted to sell the company to WWE for all of those reasons.
Of course, you want to get that money.
Yeah. And the final option was to do a pay-per-view every 6 weeks from the Hammerstein Ballroom, where they were tripling ticket prices at the end and try to wait out a television contract. But at the end of the day, Paul Heyman owned it. They were $7 million in debt, and their vendors were out. They owed the lighting rig vendor $400,000. They owed video game companies. They owned so many. The unauthorized
video game companies.
Yeah.
That game sucked ass anyway.
It did suck ass. And Acclaim wound up going bankrupt not too long after this anyway. But it's just that if you read the book, The Unauthorized History of ECW, they go into all of the vendors. Like the guy who brought the fucking chairs to the ring. They owned so many vendors' money. It was outrageous. Real quick, Heyman stated if it would have kept going, the goal was to get Rob Van Dam's debt settled and bring him on as the big hero and run with him finally. And they would have moved away from the hardcore and gone to a like MMA style, which I'm assuming is close to what ROH became with like Bryan Daniel, the PWG striking style, I'm guessing.
That was more like, the traditional wrestling.
Yeah, they wanted to bring in Kurt Hennig, Low-Key, and Conan would have been 3 guys, and you can also assume that
where does Conan fit into that template?
Well, Conan, he could have been a manager. I mean, you got to figure Conan wound up in MLW, Ring of Honor. He stayed in AAA and everything, so Conan had a place in the business. I don't know
but he didn't fit the template that they're saying they were trying to like. The template you were giving me doesn't fit. Yeah.
Hey, maybe it was a commentator. Maybe it was a manager. Maybe it was who knows, But Conan needed a job. I think is the biggest part of it, right? So that is my wind up. I'm going to give Alex the first one. We're going for 15 minutes. Ding, ding, ding. Go.
All right. Well, so like, let's say they kept on going. Where could they have gone other than Low-Key, Kurt Hennig, and Conan? I mean, Conan was. I don't know. If you were to ask me, man, at that time, what are we talking? 2001?
Early
like TNA's
2001.
TNA's like a year from becoming like an actual thing. Mm-hmm. Ken Shamrock could have been somebody that could have kind of fit that mold. And I always thought about that. I'm like, what if Ken Shamrock came around? So I mean, I would have lobbied for a Ken Shamrock ECW run.
Scott Hall also might have came in. He was already.
Did you see that?
For him.
Have you seen that video circulating on Twitter with the fucking Scarl comes out?
I've seen all 3 of those matches.
The biggest fucking pop. He didn't do nothing. He was probably drunk off his ass or high. He's over there fucking dancing. I'm like, yes. I was like, apparently he had a shit ton of heat though backstage during that whole fucking thing. Nobody wanted him there, which makes sense. But like, dude, he came out. He probably had the biggest pop of the night.
The story that you're thinking of is back when Bam Bam was still in the company, but that's a whole different. Anyway,
okay. Well, there's more to the story. Okay.
Oh yeah. One day I'll tell you. But I mean, dude, you had AJ Styles was tearing it up on what was it, Wild Side. Jerry Lawler just got fired from the WWE. Jerry Lawler could have came in and done something, right?
Could have. He already had ties to get in there if he wanted to.
He would have came in, but to some degree.
He didn't really like ECW though, so I don't know.
But
I felt like they would have like you were saying with the ROH thing. Like ROH was right there to begin with. Gabe was
Yeah.
kind of like the guy who took that whole ROH concept to the next level, because if you know, they were owned by somebody else, and then Gabe kind of took over and then ran his philosophy, which in all truth was Paul Heyman's philosophy. It
Because
was
he was
it
Paul
was
Heyman's understudy.
yeah. So something
Yeah.
tells me that what ROH was and the hype that it was in those early to mid 2000s was exactly what ECW was supposed to be. So they were probably trying to transit ECW from that hardcore to more of that like maybe realism and traditional wrestling style.
Two things that I wonder is one, would CZZW have gotten as big, and or would a guy like Nick Gage and Payne and them, would they have just gone to that company, you know? And what would that mean for like death matches? Because ECW was like the gatekeeper of how hardcore are we gonna get, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, but at that time ECW wasn't that anymore. Like around 2000 ECW, or even when they were in that stage going to the end with the 2000 stuff, like they were just, to me they were more of a TV product almost. They just had
Yeah.
a little bit of a more hard-hitting like kind of indie style into their wrestling. But otherwise in that they still
Promos,
had
the
the
stacks,
angles.
the violence.
They
Yeah.
weren't, it was no longer about the violence. The violence was just for them was more like early 90s, mid 90s, like 94, 95, 96 was like a lot of their violent stuff. And then the more they get to the later 1990s and 2000, like they were pretty much done with all that. The most violent stuff they did at that point was Sandman would come out and do stuff with the ladder and get hammered and hit himself with a fucking beer can, or Sabu would use tables. And to us, that's not really much violence. That's just hardcore. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Which isn't what CZW was. So at the end of the day, CZW would have still came into existence. It would have just been like, I don't want to say competition, but it would have kind of been its own entity, because Zandig did try out for ECW as far as I remember, if I'm not wrong. And it didn't pan out. I don't think they liked what he had to offer, and then he ended up doing his own thing. And that's what CZW became. So,
Mhm.
I just think CZW would have still existed. It would have, ECW would have just been around and been like in that ROH spot. So ECW would essentially been ROH kind of to some degree.
So do you think that ECCW would have, even if they, let's say they keep going, they're on television, they've got to bring it down to like a PG 13 level and stuff. And yeah, like guys like Balls and Sandman, they kind of start to fade away and stuff. Do you think that the fan base even still stays with them, or do you think they just generate a whole, a
Yeah,
whole
dude,
new fan base?
how crazy was One Night Stand? Like, look at the rabid crowd, dude. I mean, granted, it had been gone. That's like saying, oh man, CZW disappeared after 2003, and then they come back in like 2010 with all the old school players. Oh, of course, dude. If CZW had an old school reunion, it would be
It'd be
hot as
huge.
fuck.
Yeah.
It'd be huge. It'd be crazy. So I think that just falls along with that. And you were saying if these dudes faded, I don't think those dudes would have faded if ECW didn't go out of business. I figured, if they had somebody to claim up all their debts and stuff, and they could pay these dudes, and these dudes could kind of like make it back to where it was again. You know what I mean? I think Sandman would have still been a regular player. Balls Mahoney, RIP, would have still been a regular player. Like a lot of dudes would have still been in the company. Certain dudes would have faded, but a lot of guys who were getting shine at that point would have still been around. Rob Van Dam could have probably still been around. Sabu would have came back. All them dudes would have been back. Sandman, Rhino, Balls Mahoney. I think Axel was kind of in and out, so probably not.
He had issues.
And then they
Yeah.
had like, Joey Mercury and Christian York were on the shows, and who knows where their career would have went if ECW never folded. Because they kind of went back to doing indies a lot, and then obviously Mercury ended up in WWE doing a whole bunch of different shit. But like, I
Yeah, I
always
mean,
wonder about things
they
like
were
that.
poised to be like the Hardy Boys. They were
Yeah,
Paul Heyman's answer to that. Like, okay, well, we got these two young, handsome, flippy guys, and they're gonna come off of ladders, you know? So
yeah, no, dude, and plus, like around the early 2000s, Jeff Hardy ended up leaving WWE. So imagine, like, like he would have left WWE, ECW would have still been around by then, and then Mercury and York would have still been there. Dude, you could
mhm.
have had the Hardy Boys against them. That would have
Were
been
they
nuts
were
at that
all of those
time.
guys in that same Omega company? Were those were they
Kids.
that's okay. Were so anyway, I think what it was is ECW would have been what TNA talent wise was probably. They would have picked up a lot of, because do you know who who was there? The Dups, the Dups were in ECW at the end there. Um, but obviously TNA, their management just shit the bed in every way it could possibly shit the bed, you know. So what would have been like the hot angle that you would have kicked off to try to be like, okay, we're back and we're full cylinder, we're killing it. Like, what are the hot angles that they could have done? Rhino,
Well, I
obviously.
mean, how long was Taz's like push in WWE? Was that like a
A
year
month.
or something?
Oh,
Yeah.
he went down the drain so fast. Yeah.
So Taz would could have probably came back, depending on if they'd had the money.
Mhm.
Taz would have came back. You'd have been back in the fold, and you had RVD, and then you would have had Taz and RVD going at it.
Mhm. They've also always talked that Shane always wanted the WWE to buy it and turn EC and fund it, basically. Keep it
Yeah.
going. They
Well,
always talked about that.
yeah. Well, when they did the revitalization, they should have like, and we say it should have and it could have. Vince McMahon was never gonna let that happen. We know how Vince does business. If it's not his idea, or if it's not something that's kind of his company's idea, then he wants to have no parts of it. It
Mhm.
has to be his inception, his baby, or it's just never gonna succeed. He's always gonna. He used it for what he needed it for. The fan base was there at the time; they were clamoring about it, so he figured he'd test it out, see what happens. But at the end of the day, he never really gave it a real chance. He put a bunch of guys into the company that honestly were more so WWE talent than they were ECW talent. And by ECW talent, I mean maybe indie guys, guys who have more indie
Edgy.
and world traveled experience. And they tried with a couple of dudes. They tried turning them. The Kurt Angle one, I did enjoy Kurt
Yeah.
Angle's little fucking gig. But a lot of it was just a lot of flopping. It was just a lot of hokey pokey bullshit. And that just, to me, that wasn't ECW. They should have just said, "Here, Paul, here, we're giving you the company again. We're gonna see what happens. We'll give you 6 months. If you can make something happen in 6 months, then we'll keep it running." But they didn't want to do that. They wanted to be like, "Okay, you could do a little bit, but if we don't like it, we're gonna turn it the fuck back around." And I felt like that's not good for their business. That's not gonna do nothing. Oh, they're running in the same. They're running right before
Same
Raw in the
guys
same
making
venue.
the show,
Yeah,
same
no, run
same
smaller
camera people,
venues.
same ring, same everything. Yeah, I agree
If
with
Raw's in Philadelphia, you're running on what in Wells Fargo, and you're trying to run an ECW revitalization. You can still run before Raw, but run in a different building. You know what I mean? You're not
you.
taking away from the crowd. They're gonna draw in a smaller building in the same town, a couple hundred to a couple thousand people, but Raw's still gonna draw the fucking double digit thousands of people. So you know what I mean? So
Mhm.
I don't get it.
One thing that they always talk about, well, by them I mean basically Meltzer and Heyman, is that when ECW was running, they had to pay for their fucking television. They had to give, hey, we'll give you $400 a month, and basically it was like paid programming, as if they're selling
Yeah.
Nordic tracks and shit, Snuggies and stuff. And then when TNA
Snuggies.
started, I mean, literally, gotta love the Snuggie, man. And are Snuggies still a thing nowadays? I don't even know, but
Snuggies.
rest in
This
peace,
is the
Snuggie.
Undertaker.
No. But something happened along the way around 2005 or so, where channels needed content, because we have so many channels, they needed content, and TNA started getting money for fucking wrestling, and now MLW gets some kind of check for
Yeah.
wrestling. Ring of Honor gets some kind of check for just creating content. And it's like, if Heyman could have stuck around,
Yeah.
if he could have got 1/10 of the budget of TNA, they would have been fine.
Yeah.
They would have been great, because TNA lost like tens of millions of dollars a year. ECW lost $7 million over 8 years or something. You know,
Yeah. No, you're right. But then again, they at some point they sold that company to Dixie Carter because they were losing all that money. So
but I'm saying Spike was giving TNA money
yeah,
for what, 10 years to make a B minus, a C minus wrestling product.
yeah. And also TNA was automatically right off the gate. Oh, we're a TV company, where ECW had this bad reputation. So that no matter what TV market ECW tried to gear towards, they were always going to see ECW as being like this. Oh, you do that crazy stuff. We don't want that in our company. It's bad for business.
So
PG. Blah blah blah.
that's what I always think about when people say Vince should have let Heyman do fucking anything. Vince owned that company. If Balls Mahoney goes through a flaming table and gets second degree burns, who's paying for that? Vince is. And all I can think of is if you get hurt at some indie show, you can't sue anybody. Who are you going to sue? You know what I mean? If you work for a satellite company of WWE and you get hurt, you can sue somebody. You know what I mean? And that's why I always was like, Vincent has every right not to want to let the way, and you have the
Yeah,
drug culture, and you have all of this
yeah,
stuff because ECW went down with. So if
you're right.
excuse me, if I'm Vince and I'm like, you've been running your company like this, I don't really want to give you the keys to my car.
You have
So
a point, but he never gave it a chance anyway.
yeah,
He was already against it from the get go. It was kind of almost like his hand was forced for a minute. So
it was, yeah.
one thing I can always say, if you want to know how ECW would have ended up if it would have kept on running, all you have to do is watch that early TNA stuff, some of the matches there and some of the matches from the early ROH, because they were using Raven, and look at the shit Raven was doing with Punk. You
Yeah.
know, you had Low Key and Amazing Red doing crazy stuff. Amazing Red and AJ Styles. You don't think Gabe Sapolsky would have been a part of Heyman's like underlings and shit? Come on, it was already there. You know, and a lot of the TNA stuff with Jerry Lynn and the cruiserweights and shit like that would have been a part of ECW if they kept on running. So
Mhm.
like literally the fucking proof is there. Like if ECW was still to run, a lot of those matches you've seen in those two companies would have actually happened in ECW, not those companies.
So where do you think, let's pretend okay, let's just wave a magic wand for fun. We got about 90 seconds left. It's year 2020. ECW is still in business. What do you think are like some of the, I'm just saying, what are some of the
Ooh,
changes of the business? Do we have PWG? Do we have CZZZW? Are there death matches?
I don't know, man. That's actually a good one. I can't give you an answer because there might have not been an ROH. So ROH would have never existed. And look
ROH
at how
one
much
existed?
talent, dude, look how much talent came out of there. CZW, I think, would have still existed. To what degree, I don't know, because ECW in the ECW arena were always like this.
True,
So
yeah.
to what degree, I don't know.
But
Probably not as big.
a couple people have commented, including Dreamer, that Heyman wanted to stop running that building. He was like, "It's a money loser to run for that company to run it." They're like, "We could run a bigger building and make a lot more money," and they wanted to stop
True.
to stop doing the building.
Yeah. I
So,
think TNA would have still existed, definitely. So
well, Jeff
I
Jarrett
don't
needed a
know.
job. Would Jeff Jarrett have joined ECW?
Jeff Jarrett needed a job. I think he would have did an angle. I
Yeah,
definitely think he would have did an angle. Like, you
for
know,
sure.
Jerry Lawler and Jim Cornette had their angles. They came in, and a couple other the workers from other companies would come in. I think
Hmm.
Jeff Jarrett would have eventually did an angle. But like,
Yeah.
you know, I think if ECW is still around, who knows, man? Ring of Honor would basically be ECW. Maybe,
Would
probably.
would fucking Lesnar be who he is now
Yeah.
without
Yeah.
Heyman? I mean, Lesnar was
Yeah.
a massive star anyway, but
He was already developmental. I don't think
mhm.
guys like I think guys like Matt Riddle, like a lot of the indie guys that are in NXT would have been scooped up by Paul Heyman and his guys. Oh, we up?
15-minute time limit, Broadway, baby.
Well, there it is. Well, guys, what can I fucking say? We cut it short. 15 minutes.
All right. That's it. Thank you guys for watching.
Thank y'all. Peace.